to the project updates on that side, and then we're going to move on to the modeling side. The webinar for the next 30 minutes is going to be just a brief overview of all the updates. We can take questions in the end if there is any. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The main update to Cadworx 2014 are the dynamic pipe supports. So if you are using Cadworx 2013 and you're wondering how you're going to be affected by this new release, well, if you have dynamic pipe, if you are using our pipe supports in Cadworx 2013 or even 2012 and are looking to upgrade to Cadworx 2014, the pipe supports are the data that's being stored in pipe supports in 2012 and 2013 is completely different from what you have available in 2014. So mainly what has happened is that we have imported all of that data into the new catalog that we're using in the new version of Cadworx 13 and 14. So the data is stored exactly the same way as piping. So given that, the first thing you will need to do is update that information to the catalog, and then that'll be available. Then it'll be available in your specification. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. In addition to the dynamic pipe supports now in Cadworx 2014, we've also made available the same database code file that you had access to in 2012. So if you are using 2012 and you're looking to upgrading your existing Cadworx licenses and you want to maintain the same database schema that you had previously or you currently have, you will be able to do that in 2014. We'll show you how to do that here shortly too. There's also a few other minor updates in Cadworx 2014. I'm going to go ahead and just switch to the next slide and we'll continue talking about those a little later on. So, like I mentioned, for the dynamic pipe supports, if you want to use dynamic pipe supports in Cadworx 2014, you can do this two ways. You can start creating all your pipe supports individually. First, you'll need to create the pipe support as a component type. For instance, pipe, elbow, etc. Now we have a new component category called pipe support. So inside the pipe support, you have different types of supports that make up an assembly, right, which then is our pipe support in Cadworx. You will have to go through and create all those data files individually if you don't have any. If you are coming from Cadworx 2013 or Cadworx 2012, you have the ability of importing all those data files, and we'll take you through a quick example on how to do that here briefly. So all you have to do the import is basically select the assembly file you had available in 2012 and then make that data available in the catalog. Then you would proceed to go into the spec file to make that information available there as well. Why don't we just pause here for a minute from the actual presentation, and we'll take a quick look as to how you're going to do that. So here what I'm going to do is open a catalog that I've prepared here for this webinar. This catalog has all our components that are available for us to do all the piping design, but we also have, and then we also have a new section here for the database codes if you're going to be using that, and we'll move on to that here shortly. For the pipe supports, what you would have to do is you basically come in here and you say add category, and then you would have all the categories that have not been used inside this catalog. One of them being pipe supports. So you can do this manually. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to quickly come in and just get everything transferred over to this release. So if you notice here on our ribbon, we'll have the ability to come in and select import pipe support assembly. Here you'll get this very simple dialog box, and all it wants you to do is basically path to that old PSA file that you have in either 2012 or 13, and also path to the directory that contains all the dimensional data. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do here is I actually have 2012 installed on my computer, and I'm just going to go to that pipe support assembly and select the assembly file that you would be using. So here what it does, it basically goes out and it looks up all the different pipe supports the assemblies and all the data files that were associated to them, and it says, okay, here they are. If you see anything in red, this is very similar to piping, to you importing all the data files to piping. So if you see anything in red, basically it's a big indicator that, hey, it can't locate any of those dimensional data files. So all you have to do is basically come in and then path to that directory. So we'll select that pipe support directory in 2012. And then you'll see everything goes from red to black, giving you a good visual indicator that everything is good. So we're going to go ahead and say I want to select some individually, or you should just select all of them and go ahead and proceed to import that. So Cadworx will do its thing. It'll go through and say, okay, I have 25 pipe support assemblies, and I say, okay, great, everything's been imported. If you have if you actually want to see if there was any errors and you want to see what actually happened, there is a log file that gets plotted. You can open that up and review the changes. What I'm going to do now is just say close, and then you can see right away, it didn't take but a couple of seconds, you imported that the PSA file, the assembly file that was available in 2012 and 13, and now you have all your pipe support assemblies here. Alright, so these data files actually look the same way as they do for all the piping components. If you have any questions over what any of this information may mean, you can always just go to the properties and take a look at what's being said for this for a specific category, etc. So you have a little depiction here, and then the actual abbreviations, the meanings of all those abbreviations that you see here in the table. All right, so if you have a pipe support that is not available, you can just simply right-click and say, I want to add a different type of component, and proceed to have that available then later on for the assembly. It's pretty simple to go ahead and import all that data, whether you're creating them from scratch or just importing them. All right, so let's go ahead and continue here. So for the dynamic pipe supports, once that data has been imported to the catalog, you saw how simple that was. It's not just instantly made available for you in Cadworx. You have to go ahead and add it to the specification as well. And then the process for you to do that is also the exact same way. It's very simple. It's even simpler for those of you that already have your pipe support assemblies. If you're concerned about user shapes that you've created for pipe supports, those will get imported exactly the same way as your user shapes for piping get imported. What actually ends up happening is that when your custom pipe supports get imported, in the catalog there is there's a file directory that actually gets located on the import, and it says this is for this custom pipe support, this is the directory where that custom pipe support is. But anyways, like I said, first you have to make it available in the catalog, and then you proceed to the project and make it available there. So what we'll do next is we'll actually take a look at how we can get the pipe supports inside Cadworx in 2014. All right, so here they are in the catalog, and what I'll do is I can save this, or just what we're gonna do is we're gonna move on to the project. And again, this is another project file that I've created for this webinar. So this project has no pipe supports in it, and what I want to do is I want to make some pipe supports available for me to start modeling with. So what I'm going to do is I can come in and just start creating my own pipe support if I wanted to. I don't want to do that. I want to save some time. So instead of actually coming in and creating a new pipe support assembly, instead of doing this, what I want to do is just import what was available in 2012. So I'm going to go ahead and say I can path to the catalog that I had created, which is this one here. This is the one we just made updates to. And then what I do is I come in here and I say, okay, well, the PSA file that I'm going to, oh sorry, you know what, I went to the wrong one here. Here we go. So we're going to import that legacy pipe support. So again, I can go out and browse to the catalog that I want to be using, and then browse to the PSA file, the same one that we imported into the catalog. Once we do that, once we have everything available, then you can go ahead and just import, and it creates those exact same assemblies in 2014. So because now they're available in your project specification, now they're going to be available for you on the modeling side when you actually go into Cadworx. So let's take a look at one of these. So if I just come in here and I just double click on one of these, you can see the different assemblies that were made available for this pipe support. The definition of a pipe support has been made available. And if you guys are noticing here, we have a new type of pipe support that's available. So if you ever had the need to add a pipe support to T's, you can now do that in 2014. All of this information was previously available inside Cadworx, so if you, and now it's all been moved to the actual spec editor. So if you want to make any changes to your long descriptions, if you want to go in there and take care of the part number, you would do that all here in the spec editor. You no longer do it inside the model. All right, so let's go ahead and continue here. There's been a couple of other minor updates to the catalog. Well, this one wouldn't be so minor if you are using the db.dat file. So this has been highly requested by our users, our existing users in 2012. They wanted to keep the same schema, the same part numbering schema they had in 2012. So now what you can do is you can import the same database codes that you had available per spec in 2012. So you don't have a limit of how many database code tables you need. So you can import as many as you need. So if you had 10 specs that you were using for a project previously and you had 10 different part numbering schema files that you had, you can import all 10 of them and associate each DB codes table to each spec if you need to. When you import them, it's also the same, it works the same exact way. It's very fast, so you don't really need to do a lot. If you're creating them manually, if we come back here to our spec editor, what you'll need to do is actually create two things. You'll need to create an index table, and you'll also need to create the actual DB codes table. So these are the two additional sections that are available inside Cadworx. So you'll need to create the index codes table first if you're going to be creating them manually, and then proceed to creating the DB codes table next. If you're going to be importing them, then it does this automatically for you. So let's go take a look at how you can actually import this. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I have a DB codes table and I just want to import something that I had previously available in 2012. So I can come in and I can say, okay, let's go ahead and import this table. And again, I have 2012 installed on this machine. So I'll just go ahead and look for the DB codes table that was available previously. So here's that file. And all this file is, for those of you that aren't familiar with what this is, it's just basically a text file. And it's saying for this component type inside the program, pipe, which is being defined by this number, every time I draw a pipe this certain size, this is the part number that should be used. And so, and then it has these program codes for each specific type of component. This is how we used to do it in 2012. Now you can do the exact same thing for 2014. And it goes in there and tries to automate this process for you as much as possible on the import. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select that file, say open, and say import. It's going to create two things for us on the import. It's going to create that index code table for you automatically, and it's also going to create the DB codes table. And then there's going to be still some things that you have to go in there and do, and I'll show you what you have to do, but it should be a pretty quick process for you to go ahead and complete the implementation process. So now we're going to go ahead and say, okay, great, it imported successfully. And so what it's done, it's created this DB codes table. That same information that was available in that text file has basically been transferred here to the catalog. So now 0001, which is representative of what a pipe would be in the program. Every time a 1-inch pipe is drawn, is using a specific number. Every time a 6-inch pipe is drawn, it's using a different part number, and the same thing goes for all the different components. Now, the index code, all that is basically saying every time you see this code 0001, which is pipe, it's saying the component type that's being inserted is this here. So this is the only thing that you'll have to come in here and do. By default, it's not accepting the actual component type, so you just have to go in there and double check and verify that this number belongs to this component type. And then your migration path for the DB codes to Cadworx 2012 would be completed after you go through and do this. So it's very, very simple. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and continue with our presentation, make sure I don't miss anything here. So again, if you are going to be using database codes, all you have to do is just import them into the catalog. And once you have done that, then you'll be able to use them inside the actual project. Now, how are you going to be using them in the project? Well, you can use them two different ways. You can actually just say in the schema for the actual part number field, you can say I want to be using either this field, whatever this is, the index code for your isometric drawing, right? Or you can say I want to be using this as a part number for my isometric drawing, or in your bill of material, or wherever it is that you want to go in and store that information. So you have the flexibility of using the same schema that you have in 2013 and just querying these keywords so you can plug in the specific information that you need. And now I did mention you have two different ways of doing it. So you can use just this one field, or you can use a combination of other data inside the catalog. So you can actually go in and say this part number and then hyphenate it and use a different keyword, maybe a schedule or something that you want to go in there and define for that specific part number, or a company code in addition to this procurement code that you have here. So you can do it different ways. Just use this data file, this one keyword, or use a combination of keywords for your part number. So it's very flexible. All right. Another update that we've had for the catalog is we've actually made the catalog to where you can go in and edit any of the tags that you see here. So any of the tags that you see here for these table headings, so if for this works great for other countries or even inside your own company. If you don't want elbow to be called as elbow for the short description, you just want it to be called L or something else, then what you can do is you can go inside the catalog and turn on the component types, and it'll bring up a table which you can come in and edit, and then you can change the description for these specific tags for all of these tables that are displayed. So there is they're defined by default as they are listed there, but you now have the ability of going in there and changing the descriptions to anything that you want. And this would, I would see this being used a lot more all over the world. But if you're in the US, you have something you want to rename, so every time you're querying the keyword for a short description and it's not quite what you want it to be, then you can go in there programmatically in the catalog and change that label here. Custom data. Custom data has been available in 2013, but there was never really a way to get the custom data that you added, that additional data that you needed. There was no way to get it out of the catalog. Now there is. Any custom data that you add. So if we come back here to the catalog, and let's just take a look at pipe, for instance. So here on any data file table, you have the ability of coming in and saying, you know, if I just go to the properties of this, you have the ability of coming in and adding data to anything. Okay, but what we would add a field, and this field would be stored in the catalog. But what you didn't have available in 2013 is this ability here. Now this data is actually being added to our Cadworx components as we're modeling. And this ability is going to enable you to do many different things. So I'm going to return here to the presentation to show you what other things you have access to now in 2014. So now, because this data is actually going to the model, you can use a Cadworx line view palette to query custom data. So custom data, not only can it be made available in the catalog, but also on a project level. You can also go in there and add any custom data that you need, and then you can make a query. So if maybe there was a unit or an area or a status of a piping system, if anything that you want to add, to the specification or to the catalog, you can do that and then make that information available inside the model so that you can query it. And not only that, but you can also include it as part of your long description. And then you can also, being that it's included in your long description, you would see it show up in your isometric drawing. Or let's say you want to run a bill of material and you want that information available too. Well, when you're going in and setting up your bill of material, you'll also have that custom data field available for you to use. And then in addition to that, since the data is in the model, you will have the ability, if you're running a live database, to export that information, dump that information out to the live database. So you can then create any type of query that you need with that information and make it available in a report. So there's a lot of power to custom data now in 2014. So if you haven't been using it and you feel a need for it, check it out. All you need to do is make sure you have that little checkbox enabled for the data to go on over to the model, and then you'll have the ability of doing queries on it with your line view palette and including it in bill of materials, your ISOs, as well as your, all right, Alex. Some additional enhancements, some minor enhancements before we proceed to the modeling side are the ability for you to not only configure your descriptions, all your schemas for your long description, short description, your tag, your part number. Not only can you configure them, but you can also save them. So you have a new import and export button. So once you configure it, you can save it and reuse it for a different project. We have the ability of going in and importing SmartPlant files. So let's say you're working on a PDS job, you're working on a SmartPlant job. If you're using SmartPlant reference data as a database to maintain all that information, you can now use the same specs in PDS as you can in Cadworx, or the same specs that you would be using in SmartPlant. You can use those same specifications for Cadworx. All that needs to be done is they go through a procedure and they prepare a specification specifically for Cadworx, and then you would import all that in as a spec import. When you import that spec, it seems to be coming through very great, just perfect. And if the part numbers are coming in, descriptions are coming in, so there's very little work that needs to be done once the specification has been imported to the Cadworx side. So if you are using SmartPlant reference data, you can now create a Cadworx spec from that side, and all that needs to be done is you select one file, you import it, and your spec has been created. The specification editor can be installed now as a unique install. We've never forced our users to use a Cadworx license for the spec editor. So if you have a project that you're working on and you need someone to go in and take the time to set up your specs, but they're not necessarily going to be using a license of the program, you can just install the spec editor and they can do their work and not worry, and then you not have to worry about license usage. We've added a little bit more flexibility within our spec editor to copy data from one spec to another, so you can do that a lot more freely than you did before. So it's just getting easier. All right, so let's continue here. So updates to the modeling side. As we mentioned, we have new dynamic pipe supports. We'll talk a little bit more about those here in a second, and there's a few other items that I'd like to go over before we conclude the webinar. So dynamic pipe supports, as I mentioned, you have to have them available first in the catalog. You choose what you want for your spec, and then you'll have the same pipe support palette available listing those pipe support assemblies that you created or configured. When you're modeling the pipe supports are now belong to the actual pipe. So they are associated to the pipe, meaning if you go in and you do perform a change size, the pipe support will change. If you perform a pipe move function where you need to move an entire piping system, if there's pipe supports there, they will move as well. If the pipe supports have been inserted by detect steel, where there is an actual connection to the steel, if you move the pipe support will also adjust. If you have an adjustable support there like that rod, you will see that adjust based off of the movement that you make. And then you can notice there graphically on my computer here that there's a new plus grip on pipe supports. You can select that pipe support at any moment. You can change it from one type to another if you need to, if you place the incorrect one. Center of gravity. We've always had center of gravity, but we never had a combined CG. So now we have the ability to give you that. So not only does it print out the center of gravities for each individual discipline that we see here, but it also combines everything for you, and it prints it out in a nice little report. So if you need this, if you needed the combined CG, now you have it in 2004. You can start creating all your pipe supports individually. First, you'll need to create the pipe support as a component type. For instance, pipe, elbow, etc. Now we have a new component category called pipe support. So inside the pipe support, you have different types of supports that make up an assembly, right, which then is our pipe support in Cadworx. You will have to go through and create all those data files individually if you don't have any. If you are coming from Cadworx 2013 or Cadworx 2012, you have the ability of importing all those data files, and we'll take you through a quick example on how to do that here briefly. So all you have to do the import is imports are the data that's being stored in pipe supports in 2012 and 2013 is completely different from what you have available in 2014. So mainly what has happened is that we have imported all of that data into the new catalog that we're using in the new version of Cadworx 13 and 14. So the data is stored exactly the same way as piping. So given that, the first thing you will need to do is update that information to the catalog, and then that'll be available. Then it'll be available in your specification. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. In addition to the dynamic pipe supports now in Cadworx 2014, we've also made available the same database code file that you had access to in 2012. So if you are using 2012 and you're looking to upgrading your existing Cadworx licenses and you want to maintain the same database schema that you had previously or you currently have, you will be able to do that in 2014. We'll show you how to do that here shortly too. There's also a few other minor updates in Cadworx 2014. I'm going to go ahead and just switch to the next slide and we'll continue talking about those a little later on. So like I mentioned, for the dynamic pipe supports, if you want to use dynamic pipe supports in Cadworx 2014, you can do this two ways. You go to the project updates on that side, and then we're going to move on to the modeling side. The webinar for the next 30 minutes is going to be just a brief overview of all the updates. We can take questions in the end if there is any. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The main update to Cadworx 2014 are the dynamic pipe supports. So if you are using Cadworx 2013 and you're wondering how you're going to be affected by this new release, well, if you have if you are using our pipe supports in Cadworx 2013 or even 2012 and are looking to upgrade to Cadworx 2014, the pipes basically select the assembly file you had available in 2012 and then make that data available in the catalog. Then you would proceed to go into the spec file to make that information available there as well. Why don't we just pause here for a minute from the actual presentation, and we'll take a quick look as to how you're going to do that. So here what I'm going to do is open a catalog that I've prepared here for this webinar. This catalog has all our components that are available for us to do all the piping design, but we also have, and then we also have a new section here for the database codes if you're going to be using that, and we'll move on to that here shortly. For the pipe supports,